One of the oldest cities in Hungary is a place called Pest in the south near the Yugoslav border. There you can find some of the most beautiful porcelain in the world. It comes from the Zolnay studio, which has been turning out exquisite pieces for over a century. The porcelain is known for its iridescent luster, inventive design, and consummate craftsmanship. But porcelain isn't the only reason to visit this lovely town. A visit to Pest is like an adventure in a restless time capsule, a mix of architectural styles combined to produce a startling display. The city was occupied as far back as Roman times, but unlike many Hungarian cities, Pest managed to escape the devastating cycle of invasions and wars over the centuries. It's endured to be one of Hungary's most fascinating and lovely cities. The cultural collisions that characterize Pest are nowhere more evident than in its main square. On one side of the plaza is a Catholic church. At the other end is the largest Turkish monument in Hungary, the domed 16th century mosque of Gezi Kashim. Painstaking restoration in the 20th century has allowed modern visitors to appreciate the original calligraphy. Originally built from the stones of a medieval church, it's somehow fitting that today the former mosque serves as the town's central parish church. This mosque of Pasha Yokovali Hassan is an unusual remnant from the Turkish period, rare because it's almost completely intact. It's the only remaining Muslim sanctuary in Hungary. Pest still represents an extraordinary fusion of forces. It is Hungary's fastest growing city and one of its most dynamic. In its deep respect for history and its openness to the challenges of the modern era, Pest epitomizes the Hungarian spirit. In its austere beauty, Hungary's Great Plain, or Puszta, is the country's most characteristic landscape. The low horizon and vast sky seem deep and endless. The towns of the Puszta are quite distinct from those in other parts of the country. Occasionally, women can still be seen wearing authentic, colorfully embroidered folk costumes. The towns tend to be simpler here, less cluttered by historic monuments. Respect for traditional customs and a deep love for the land dominate life in these parts. The capital of the Great Hungarian Plain is Debrecen, some 370 miles east of Budapest near the Romanian border. It's both the cultural and economic center of eastern Hungary. Although growing rapidly, it's managed to retain the charm of an old country town. The largest Calvinist church in the nation is here in the heart of the city. It was designed in 1805 and holds over 5,000 worshipers. It was here in this great church that the Hungarians declared their independence from the Habsburgs in 1849. Debrecen's major historic significance rests on the fact that it's a bastion of Protestantism in a predominantly Catholic country. That's why locals sometimes call their city the Calvinist Rome. In the year 1520, the Reformation came to Debrecen. 12 years later, the Catholic Church was closed and only Protestants were permitted to settle in the city. A short distance from the Calvinist church is this college, one of the city's 3 major institutions of higher learning. While most of the nation was under German control, the anti-Nazi coalition met here. They kept the hope of peace alive in a nation ravaged by war. In addition to its tradition of such time-honored values of peace and freedom, Debrecen also bears a long tradition as a center of learning. Today, the town is proud of its universities and 3 academies. The treasure of the Calvinist College is its library of over 500,000 volumes. Debrecen's Dairy Museum is one of Hungary's major provincial museums. Its collection includes a wealth of archaeological and ethnographic artifacts, as well as beautiful folk art from the region. This room is devoted to the paintings of one of Hungary's most famous artists, Mihály Munkácsy. Here is one of his best-known works, Ecce Homo, a biblical documentary. On a line where the plains and low mountains meet is the picturesque Baroque town of Eger, about 200 miles northeast of Budapest. The town was one of the great centers of Renaissance culture in Hungary. In 1552, from this now ruined castle fortress, a group of women and men staged an unprecedented victory over the fierce Turkish army, a force 6 times their size. Immediately afterwards, news of the victory spread throughout Europe, temporarily ruining the Turks' reputation of invincibility. But heartbreak followed close at the heels of glory. 34 years later, the Turks returned, and for almost a century, Eger was one of the most important northern outposts of Muslim might. This 14-sided structure, the Kathuda minaret, is the northernmost minaret in Europe. Built at the turn of the 17th century, it's a poignant reminder of the Turkish era. Only 17 miles north of Eger is the little resort of Szilvásvárad, deep in the wilderness area of the Bükk Mountains. This bucolic setting is the home of the famous Lipizzaner stud farm. The vineyards of Eger touch the edge of town. At traditional wine cellars here and in old taverns in town, the locals proudly dispense their world-famous local wine, Egri Bajkavér. It's affectionately called Bull's Blood of Eger because it's both red and robust. But no Hungarian wine is more respected than Tokai wine. The first vineyards here in the Northeast were probably planted by the Celts several hundred years before Christ. Over the centuries, a unique combination of soil, climate, and artistry has produced a wine that Louis XIV called the wine of kings and the king of wines. Some of its other famous fans include Frederick the Great, King of Prussia, Goethe, Beethoven, and Voltaire, who wrote, "Tokai wine kindles words of genius." Unquestionably, volcanic particles in the soil contribute to the wine's unique characters. Some believe that veins of gold ore in the underlying rock are the special ingredient making this wine so extraordinary. Legends even tell of glimmering golden droplets spotted on the vines. A complete understanding of its unique character might simply be too complex to unravel, and maybe the same could be said of Hungarian people themselves. From the connoisseurs of high culture in Budapest to the artists of Szentendre, from the gentle villagers along Lake Balaton to the dashing Ciscos and quiet herdsmen of the vast Puszta, from the intellectuals of Debrecen to the radiant gypsy musicians on back roads, something mysterious in the Hungarian soil has bred a people that is humble in manner, noble in spirit, and passionate in their values. Certainly in our lifetimes, there have been few nations which have displayed such remarkable resilience in the face of devastation and invasion. The ability of the Hungarians to weather the political storms, to shrug off adversity and find joy in their lives and in the traditions of their ancestors should be an inspiration to the rest of the world.